red, blue, purple light. Red, blue, purple light. Friends, facts. Red, blue, purple light. Friends, red and blue, purple light. Friends, facts. You can get to know the ledger, sacrilegious Sunday to melanin Monday. You can get to know the ledger, my love. Just open your third eye on Thursday. Lord, the food, the art, the clothes, the Vatican's getting exposed fast. We put the show on the road. You better stay on your toes. I was till the land focused on the ego. Then I open my heart, let go of the ego. Grand after grand, we stacking up these C notes. Facts, facts, yeah. We gon' put this shit on our backs. Facts, facts. We in your city, pull up where we at. Facts, facts. Peace, love and light. Peace, love to the family. Peace, love and light. To the family. Peace, love and light. To the family.
These days and time, black man, is going to be the time that you have been waiting for. You came here for a reason. Whatever pressure, whatever adversity, whatever the fuck you feel, I don't know what you feel, but whatever you may be feeling is going to push you, and it's going to provoke you, and it's either going to make you or break you, similar to how pressure busts pipes or the shit makes diamonds.
I'm wildin'. Peace to the family, peace to you and yours. Peace to the family, peace to you and yours. Welcome to Know the Ledger 444. You are now rocking with the best. Yes, this is your brother, Red Pillar, your host for the evening. And I will be joined by my special guest, my good brother, B-Del 1014 family. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and open up the line for B-Del 1014 in the building.
What's
Peace
up?
to the
What's
God.
up? Peace. What's up?
Peace, 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 God. How are you?
Great. What about yourself?
Man, I am doing awesome. I'm doing wonderful. I'm actually doing better now that we are in the building here doing what we do. You feel me? So I want to first and foremost give a shout out to everybody in the building. I usually do roll call, but we're going to get right into it tonight. We're going to, hold that on. We might do roll call at the end and whatnot. But shout out to everybody in the building. We have a combined family tonight. We got B-Del's family on his platform, and we have the Know the Ledger family. Everybody, make sure y'all do some networking in the chat. How was your day today, my good bro?
Everything was great, man. Got my workout in. I peeped when Blue, he put out that you got to have 3 wins in your day. You got to have a spiritual win, a mental win, and a physical win. So
saw that. That's good discipline.
Pretty much my evolution. So that's what I'm all about.
Definitely. That is good discipline. You know what I mean? I co-sign that. That's definitely something that we should be leading with, as just as an exercise, you know what I mean? So salute to Blue Pillar. We did a powerful live earlier, and we were fleshing out a plethora of news stories that were dominating the headlines and whatnot. And one of the most dominant news stories that have been taking over my timeline is the arrest, or the what we would call the indictment, the federal indictment of Big U in the Rolling 60s Crips, which is the organization, the street organization that our good brother Nipsey Hussle was a part of. So tonight I'm paying homage not to the gangs with the look, but to the West Coast, to the, you know what I mean, to the West Coast, to the messianic West Coast spirit and whatnot. You know what I'm saying? So shout out to everybody out in the West Coast. Yeah, we rooting for y'all. You know, we definitely rooting for y'all. And tonight's conversation is going to be a very enlightened conversation about the messianic force that our good brother Ermaeus, aka Nipsey Hussle, was in possession of, and some of the things that we're seeing play out. And we're going to put a metaphysical lens on that. Okay.
Most definitely.
Yes. So how did you take the news of what you saw today with this indictment and the highlight of, you know, the criminal organization that was running in the background with the brother Big U? Allegedly, we have to always say that, innocent until proven guilty, you know, just for the record.
Right. Well, I feel like, you know, karmic retribution in itself is a form of resurrection. So we living in this time of rebirth. We live in a time of reconstruction. So a lot of things that was subjected to the Piscean age of darkness, it has to basically reverse the polarity, because you can't bring a fifth dimensional energy into a three-dimensional energy. So
right.
It's going to be one of those things where you have to separate amongst our people the ones who is confined to the hedonistic activity, gang culture, drug culture, whole culture, all these things, all those energies is basically stagnating the evolution of the planet. So
right.
what's taking place right now, like, you know, Nipsey in itself, he had a Christ energy to him. He had a Neo.
He had a Neo energy. He had a Messiah energy, a messianic force. And I want to qualify that, because I'm sure that there may be people in the audience who may not even listen to a Nipsey Hussle, might not be familiar with his background. So we will qualify that. But please continue.
Yeah, well, and he also died, you know, when he was I think he
33
was years old.
Yeah.
So, you know, that is also in connection with the spine when you're talking about the restoration of the regeneration spinal fire. So that's traveling up the 33rd vertebrae. So we living in the 9 years. So a lot of stuff that's taking place on a physical level actually happens on a spiritual level first.
Okay.
So we living in the time of like to where human consciousness speeds up the vibration and it manipulates the energy of physical matter. So a lot of stuff that was, you know, that basically embarked upon the old timelines of the Piscean age of darkness has to be restored by way of the matriarchy in the timeline of Aquarius. Because like I said, you remember when the Pope, he opened up those, the two pillars, the two pillars of the silver key and the golden key. So we going back into the galactic center. So when you go back into the galactic center, that speeds up the magnetic filaments of the planet to the point where it travels on a 0-point energy field to where you go back to the apex of the golden age, going back to the great mother. So if you also, that's also connected to that. We're going to get into that. I don't want to spill so many beans. We want to save that for Saturday. You know what I'm saying? We would definitely want that one for Saturday.
Indeed. You know, coincidentally enough, on Saturday, ladies and gentlemen, me, Bedell, Blue Pill, and Alchemizing 44, we have an event. We put a lecture together entitled "Fear of a Blackamore Messiah: The Rise of the Chosen Ones." Right, and there's somewhat of a ritual that always kind of takes place around the time of these lectures that we do. We do it every month for our Patreons and whatnot, but the way that it goes is we pick a title, and you know, I have a saying, this: the great divine speaks through signs and whatnot, and the universe will qualify the title of the lecture in real time. So this one right here was taking a while and whatnot, because that whole Messiah, the messianic energy, you know, it wasn't being, it was being summoned up, but it wasn't concrete. It didn't crystallize. And then today, with the arrest of Big U, highlighting, you know, what people have been saying in whispers and whatnot, that this was the man that was responsible for the quote unquote hit that was taken out on Nipsey Hussle, who we are identifying as the messianic force on the West Coast. Now, let's go ahead and qualify what a messianic force means, because some people may look at messianic or Messiah from Abrahamic religious aspect and be like, wait a minute, this brother was involved in street organizations, or this brother, when he rapped, he was using curse words, and, you know, coming at it from a perspective of Sunday school, from a control perspective of religion. We're not talking about that. And that's not what the Messiah is. And that's not what messianic forces are. And it's never been that, and it will never be that. A messianic force is something that lives within an individual, but it also represents the people and whatnot. A messianic leader is somebody who can create the divine spark in the people simply by just speaking to them. So you have messianic political figures, you have messianic sports figures, or messianic athletes, you have messianic musicians and things of that nature. When it comes to West Coast entertainment, West Coast music, or what we all know and from our generation as West Coast politics, in my humble opinion, from the aspect of what I saw, because I went down there for the coronation of Nipsey Hussle, and from what I felt, from what I saw, from what I witnessed, there's nobody out there that would match that quote unquote definition of the Messiah, the imprint of a Messiah. He was leading his people, right, into a place of that quote unquote vibration that you were speaking of, that's needed in order to jump into the fifth dimension. He was giving them the tools that they needed and whatnot, both through his demonstration, real life demonstration, the way that he was moving, the things that he was doing, the businesses that he was engulfed in, like what they call he had a blockchain association called Section 90, right? Dealing with technology, dealing with high technology. Inside of his store, he had what is known as smart tags and whatnot, which today we know as QR codes and things of that nature. But when he introduced it, it was kind of cutting edge and whatnot. So, and then also he was an advocate for cryptocurrency, mostly Bitcoin and whatnot, back when it was affordable, right? Now we're looking at Bitcoin and we don't have a piece of Bitcoin. So to have a conversation about Bitcoin in a very positive sense, and to push Bitcoin, for me to be a champion about Bitcoin and say Bitcoin to the moon, I can't necessarily do that right now, because it's not advantageous to the people. I might have a few Bitcoins. I might know some people with a few Bitcoins, but I know as a collective, we don't have that. Nipsey Hussle, when he was campaigning and when he was telling the rap, he was telling other rappers, and he was telling the audience, look, this is something that y'all need to be invested in. This is the future. He knew how to articulate it. He understood what it was. He had Jack Dorsey and a whole bunch of other people who, you know, were kind of heavy in the crypto space. They were willing to help out and whatnot. So he was ready to pull his people, especially in that gang culture, and especially the majority of LA, regardless if they're affiliated or not, there's a thick film over that city. There's a cloud over that city. When I went to LA, I went live and I reported, and I was like, yo, there's no way that our people could prosper out here as long as this gang shit is still active. I don't care what nobody says. This is a complete cancer on the growth and progress of our people in LA, which happens to be a very rich, a very wealthy, I'm talking about spiritually, the people out there, very artistic, very forward thinking, but there's a hindrance because of the street life. And I'm talking about the street life from the aspect of what this indictment is talking about, not what Nipsey was doing, because sometimes you got to go inside of the matrix in order to fix it from within.
Facts.
You know? and it wouldn't fare the language that he was having, the language that he was sharing. Like, people understood his language because you got to speak the language of the people. They would not, you couldn't break the spell of the gang culture if you're not in the gang per se. You could go to war against it, but he was one of the ones who was trying to give it a sort of a alchemized position. Like, he was performing a sort of alchemy inside of these street organizations to say, yo, I'm going to pull out the cream of the crop out of these organizations, and we're going to do community revolutionaries in progress. You know what I mean? Rather than that shit that's going on that we see these days on No Jumper and other places and whatnot. Kendrick Lamar is not the Messiah. He has a messianic force as well, but he's more like the harbinger. He's like John the Baptist.
Facts.
He was more like John.
Yeah, he wasn't able to galvanize a multitude of demographics of people, just like how Nipsey was. Nipsey kind of like had the same energy as Clarence 13X when you study, the 5% Nation that was connected to the Nation of Islam. See, Clarence 13X, he had the ability to resonate with people who was in the street, whether it was drinking, drug dealing, shooting dice, or whatever. He was able to meet them at their frequency in order to pull them out of the situation. Just like you said, you got to use the matrix in order to pull people out of it. So Nipsey, he used his resources and his status and his platform in order to galvanize and cultivate this unification process of the Crips and the Bloods. And that was also detrimental to the criminal activity that was acclimated to California. So if you destabilize that energy, you're going to be putting holes in somebody's pocket on Wall Street, because now you ain't got enough niggas going to jail right now. You see,
right? Because they hedged against, there's a hedge against us. They're shorting our stocks, right? In so many ways, people can understand what that means. There's so much money that's invested, especially into the prison industrial complex in California specifically. Mm-hmm. They are suppressing a messianic force that existed on that land since the days of Queen Khalifa. Right? It was tribal back then.
Facts.
Okay, it was tribal back then, the same way that it's tribal now. Facts. Right? Mm-hmm. And like you were saying, the energy that he was bringing was a unification energy through not through word only, but also through his actions. Okay. Yeah. When I visited Los Angeles for his ascension, his I don't call it a burial or anything, because it was more like a coronation and whatnot. It was an ascension protocol when we was inside of the State Farm Arena. I believe that's what it's called. Mm-hmm. And it just felt different. I've been to plenty of funerals that was not a funeral, that was more like a procession. Not a procession. That was more like a coronation and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And when I went out there, I saw the unification. I saw the people coming together. I saw people making covenants. Like, yo, we're going to put all of this BS to the side. Staples Center, there you go. We're going to put all of this BS to the side, and we're going to come together for something that is more, quote unquote, powerful than the shit that we're standing on. But who was in the way of that? Who threw the monkey wrench into that program months later and whatnot? Who was responsible for helping to soil that man's good name by spreading rumors and, just throwing a lot of BS on him?
Yes. Big U.
And there's a group of them.
Yeah. The great majority of the Rolling 60, because, he got bigger in the program. So anytime you get bigger than, the Crip organization, is going to breed a lot of jealousy. So that was basically one of the things that he embarked, the implications of that, the negative factions of the Crips or whatever. They also got a saying, they say you ain't a real Crip until you kill one too. So I don't understand that dynamic in itself too. So,
well, I mean, that I've heard that term as well, but not even I think they say you're not a real neighborhood Crip.
Okay.
Specifically that set. Okay. They're known for set tripping on one another and things of that nature. And yeah, that's crazy. But like you said, we're seeing the karma, we're seeing karmatic retribution,
Right.
because the usual suspects who was responsible for soiling that man's name, right? Who might have a hand in his demise, are seeing their quote unquote karma visit them.
Yeah.
3 people today, and there's maybe more that's a part of that indictment, but all 3 of them were responsible for trying to drag that man's name through the mud. But one of the main reasons why, of course, these organizations would choose to quote unquote do things like that is because what Nipsey was representing, he was representing a certain height that they could not quote unquote reach. So he would make the operations or the program look bad if he was saying, you know what? This is what we're going to be doing. We're going to come together and build something. We're going to come together and be entrepreneurs. We're going to bring our mind. That's definitely against the program that people like Big U and them were representing, if you read the paperwork and see what they were doing behind the scenes.
Right.
So it was a hindrance to what it is that they were trying to do and whatnot. And he was removed because of the fact that he was a messianic force and he was going to become bigger than the program, like you said. And what the program ultimately is to keep our people dumbed down in a quote unquote lower frequency so they could be cannon fodder for all of these operations and these quote unquote agendas that these people have, like you see taking place in LA after his demise.
Right.
The crime rate wasn't the shit went crazy in 2020.
And then on top of that, he was combating gentrification in that geographical area in LA. And I wanted to build like an apartment complex. I'm not sure if it's a train station, but he was combating gentrification and he was revitalizing the job infrastructure and giving people lucrative job opportunities that came off the streets. And he was giving people jobs that just came home from doing like a 10-year bid, 20-year bid. So he was basically transforming the minds and the economic system within the factions of LA. So that in itself, like he was really, chopping down a great majority and tackling a lot of the, the implications that subjugated, LA as a whole. So from an economic standpoint, he was coming from a place of artificial intelligence. He was teaching the people that. It was a multitude of things that he was basically doing as far as like that was reversing the polarity of everything that subjugated, and hindered, the Black demographic in LA.
Right. And one of the reasons why that is of such importance is because of the role that LA plays when it came to them being the birthplace of gangster hip hop or gangster rap, commercialized gangster rap, that is, and how it clipped and it eclipsed and it clipped the conscious quote unquote rap that was very dominant at that time. We're talking 89, 90, 91. It basically put 4 flats on that tire and left the car on the side of the highway. Prior to that, there was an upward mobility that our people was moving inside of that car, right? Yep. Where there was a balance. It wasn't just all about hugging trees and things of that nature, but you definitely had the frequency was very much higher. People were freely, willingly calling themselves God and whatnot, identifying themselves as God. Like you were saying earlier, Clarence 13X, what he brought to the 5 percenters in the nation of gods and earth, right? Which was a street organization, right? But when you look at the multitude of rappers, the Big Daddy Kanes, the KRS-Ones, the Brand Nubians, there's a litany of rappers that had knowledge of self that was dropping a lot of gems. They was dropping a lot of, a lot of information. They were the teachers of our generation before the master teachers came amongst us, right? They were the ones who kind of primed the walls, and the master teachers came through and they painted it and whatnot. But we were primed by X-Clan. We were primed by KRS-One. We were primed, we were given Nas and whatnot, Wu-Tang to a degree. So when we were introduced to Colors, South Central, Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, and it had a soundtrack that went along with it, right? we began to see the reversal of this energy that our people were vibrating on, and then darkness ensued, and we are where we are now.
Facts.
Not to say that Nipsey Hussle was about to change all of that. You know what I mean? There's no way that you're going to reverse the curse that was put on our people through the music and through the entertainment overnight, right? But it was progress.
Facts. And I like one of those things he was able to, not only he was demonstrating the negative perceptions of gangsterism, even though he was submerged in that, but he was also showing the positive aspects as well. So he was a balanced individual. Like, even though he was a Crip, but at the same time he was very articulate. He had like an energy of authenticity that wasn't able to be emulated, basically. It's one of those things where it's like I said, it's a neo energy that can't be duplicated. It's hard to explain. Like, you got many different, Crips that, that rapped and did, many different forms of philanthropy and gave resources to their community. But when he did it, it just stood out a lot more. You know what I'm saying? It just had a different authenticity to it.
Because, like you said, the authenticity of the fact that he didn't have to do these things, right? So he was recognized by his community as, you know what, this is who he is, right? So we know that he ain't capping, because we all could co-sign that this is what he's been on, this is what he's doing and whatnot. But the beautiful part of what Nipsey was doing is that he was growing.
Facts, evolving.
So when you have stagnation and whatnot, and it's just somebody that's running around and they pushing the civil right line, and no disrespect to the civil right movement and whatnot, but what you were seeing with him was an evolution in his consciousness. It might not have been the consciousness that people are comfortable with these days. It might not have been the consciousness that, New York is on and whatnot. It's the consciousness that fit that time and that place and that environment, right? He was learning about Dr. Sebi.
Yep.
There was a book that he recommended called A Superior Man that I read, and that helped me out in my growth and progress. He came out with a book list. He was doing rounds on podcasts. He was having intelligent conversations with Gary Vee and whatnot about the crypto game, about entrepreneur. This is something that people were not talking about in circa 2017, 18, and things of that nature. People look at it now in this post-2020 reality where everybody is an entrepreneur, but prior to that, that was not embraced.
Right.
You feel me? What we was doing in Harlem and whatnot, that wasn't embraced. That was looked down upon. Like, oh, what y'all doing out here selling your own shit, Right. So he was evolving to a place to whereas who would have known where he would have been in 2025 if he was basically still on his upward trajectory, his upward mobility. How many other rappers would have aligned with his vision? How many other rappers would have, or how many other entertainers, athletes, whoever, the people who we be asking why y'all not helping them niggas,
right?
Right? You know what I'm saying? He could have called the meeting. He could have called the sit downs. He could have called a lot of things because his power and his influence was growing. You feel me? So one of the great things that he would have been able to do, and I talked about it earlier with Blue, is during 2020 lockdown, he would have been able to be like, yo, the Sebi doc probably would have either been out, or he would have been like, nah, there's this thing called CMOS. Check it out. There's this guy called Dr. Sebi. Check it out. There's, you know what I mean? He would have been able to point in these directions and steer, not our community, we got us. But when we look at our people in the condition that they're in and whatnot, we talking about the chosen ones. So prior to a lot of us being quote unquote chosen ones, where were you? Where were you in your mind? Who woke you up? Who turned your lights on? Who gave you knowledge of self? What was your eureka moment? Because I think everybody has one.
Facts.
Everybody has an enlightener. Everybody has that moment where they took the red pill and the lights came on. That's what he was doing. He's from the dirt. In the dirt, the dirt needs some fertilizing right now. In the dirt, a lot of people who rose up and became these beautiful fruit trees and whatnot, y'all niggas was in the dirt. Don't forget where you come from.
Facts.
So it would have there was a humongous loss when he was taken and whatnot. And the people who I feel are solely responsible for interrupting that timeline are going to find their fate. They cannot escape the karma of their fate for doing such an egregious act to a messianic force and whatnot. And I really don't feel like, and on Saturday, we're really going to do a deep dive on the messianic force. We're going to do a real deep dive on the messianic energy. We're going to unpack it, and we're going to really help people understand the power of the Messiah or the messianic ones, because it's not just one person. You know what I mean? This community, I would say, is moving with the messianic force. Okay, the things that we're able to do, the breakthroughs, the amount of lives that collectively. You was at the gathering of the masters.
Right.
You was at the non-ether God fest. That's the messianic force. That's the collective.
Facts.
They could move mountains. So
literally.
Yeah.
So like I said, we definitely have to have more gatherings like that, because that cosmic convergence in itself enhances the flow of cosmic energy. So like I said, it's one of those things where, when you get a multitude of people and they're vibrating on a flow of authenticity, that's really going to bring up the intrinsic energy, whatever demographic of landmasses of where we're at. Just like Alchemizing said, if you galvanize a certain audience of people and they're vibrating on a certain frequency, that energy is still going to be corporeal there, even if you leave the establishment.
Even if you leave, you're going to charge the grid up.
Yep. And it's going to leave an energetic imprint on the universe.
Right.
So they're going to leave an imprint, and that imprint is going to reverse whatever type of negative, polarity that was subjugating that atmosphere at that time period. So that's why it's imperative, especially right now in the 9 year, man, we got to get our resources together. We got to start having a lot more, events. Definitely.
Yes. I'm, I am campaigning for at least one event a quarter. That would be 4 events a year and whatnot. One of the most important things that we have is the ability to gather at this point. Everything is not going to be solved in one sitting and whatnot. And hopefully there may come a day where we could gather and we don't have to separate after gathering. You know what I mean? We could gather on 50 acres, 60 acres that we own. And there is no, we got to leave and go home, or we got to turn we here. Like we got to, you know what I mean? We could start the process. Right. That is not a far-fetched vision and whatnot, especially the way that especially the way that this administration is showing their fangs and whatnot. However, I'm not inclined to join forces with people who are running away in fear.
Right.
Like, this is something that I would want to do without Donald Trump being on your neck and whatnot. This is something that I would want to do because Donald Trump is pushing people to unify. That's not real unity. That's not real tribe.
Facts.
That's people in fear looking for a rest haven. So you're not going to really build like that. You know what I mean? You're not really going to build like that. It's not going to sustain itself and whatnot. But the ability for us to do something that we've never done before is definitely in our hands right now.
Yeah, and especially with the the establishment of the Trump administration, a lot of the things, it's what I call the synthetic Luciferian Great Reset. It's going to force people to unify in itself.
Yes.
He took away, I think it was government benefits. In the next 2 years, that's going to be eradicated. And then he just uplifted the disband on segregation. So
saw that, right?
Yeah. So it's going to be one of those things where you're going to have a lot of affliction and a lot of chaos, and that's going to bring people together as well. So like I said, you got 2 different timelines going on. You having a planetary reset and a forced engineered reset that's coming from the establishment. So, like I said, you got to use the matrix in order to get out. So, so whatever keys that they throw on us, we just got to alchemize that energy, and we got to alchemize it and use it for the evolution.
Right. We definitely have to utilize it. Once again, like you said, we got to just alchemize it. We've been doing this from time immemorial. We could take negatives and turn them into positive. We literally could turn lead into gold and whatnot. Yep. But I feel that we are not using, or we don't see ourselves as a messianic force, right? That is, you know, we spark we could divinely spark others by doing what it is that we do. Case in point, we did a gathering in 2022 where we did the Stone Mountain. We did Stone Mountain. You know, we climbed Stone Mountain. It was hundreds of us. I don't even, you know what I mean? It was hundreds of us and whatnot. As a result of that action, right? There have been multiple groups in Atlanta, not conscious groups, right? Just, I'm talking about regular groups who have come together and coalesced. And now they're doing Stone Mountain, quote unquote, expeditions and whatnot. They're climbing the mountain. They're going on the mountain. And because once again, it's called Crystal Mountain before Stone Mountain. So like Alchemizing was saying, you could literally leave your imprint on that mountain and it will resonate. Mm-hmm. They were doing rituals on that mountain for hundreds of years and whatnot before it was Stone Mountain. And when it was Crystal Mountain, it literally was a place for only sacred ceremony. Okay, and the indigenous tribes and whatnot. And then the KKK took it over. Yep. The conversations about mountains are real interesting, especially when I bring up Stone Mountain, is because there have been a slew of missing people in the Stone Mountain area.
Facts. Yep.
Right? This is something that you put me onto.
Yep.
And then the story comes out earlier this week about two twins, right? That they found on a mountain 90 miles away from Stone Mountain called Bell Mountain, right? Bell is ball. Okay. They arrested a European today because the pictures of the twins are on the internet.
Yep.
And that's the case with all of our cadavers and whatnot. When it comes to rituals, they don't leak pictures unless it's a ritual. So whenever there's a picture of a cadaver or a dead body on the internet, that is a part of the ritual. Millions of people are watching it on the dark web. They're in Reddit rooms and whatnot. They're sharing the pictures. That was a ritual. That was a sacrifice. Yep. Right? Them two twins got took on that mountain. They did whatever they did with them and whatnot, similar to what they were doing on Stone Mountain when the KKK owned the mountain and they were doing sacrifices of our people on that mountain. It is it's a theory that I hold that the Atlanta child murders was involved with the Stone Mountain rituals through the KKK. The KKK had a hand in that, or what they call the white supremacists and whatnot. Bobby Hemmett put us on to the occult aspect of the Atlanta child murders. When you read the paperwork and when you go deeper into it, they were mutilating these children's phalluses and taking melanin from them. And they were doing all kind of heinous crimes. And then after the Atlanta child murders, children began murdering. That's when you see children being murdered all over Atlanta to the point where they're still doing it to this day.
Yep. And then the same thing, like remember we was making that connection with the neuromelanin and Neuralink and the melanin abduction.
Right.
You know, because of the cybernetic dictatorship and you understand the genetic format of the Canaanite, they don't have the ability to activate that melanocyte, which gives them the apex of the Christ consciousness. So they got to do it in a synthetic way because they know that the neuromelanin contains a electrical energy that travels on natural ether. So they're not able to spark that Christ consciousness. They don't have the magnetites and the dendrites in the brain to cultivate that melanocyte. which is basically an intelligence molecule that is in connection with the brain and central nervous system melanin. So they don't have that ability. They don't have that genetic format, and they don't have those neurological faculties. So they got to use artificial intelligence as a catalyst in a medium in order to survive, solar cycle 25.
Right. Henceforth,
harmonize with their genetics. Because, carbon in itself, like pressure makes diamonds. If you don't have magnetizing dendrites, they can basically manipulate the two frontal lobes of the brain, which is connected to the motor cortex gland. It'll dematerialize the two frontal lobes. So that's where you get your whole concept of zombification. So that's why our people, even though we live in an age of artificial intelligence and technology, we got to be very critical of what we put inside of our bodies. Even if on a dietary level, the genetically modified foods in itself has nanotechnology. It has psychotronic, biogenic,
the Jabberwocky had the right. So I'm sure everybody has realized that people who got that jab have completely begun to change and morph from their dispositions, their spirits, their attitudes, their, not just the physical health, the mental health, right? People have been compromised with that nanotechnology. But let me show you this article real quick, because you brought up the aspect of the neurotransmitters and whatnot. This is an article that came out earlier this month, and we're going to do a more deep dive on it on Saturday. But there was a man, I believe this is in Japan or China, a Chinese crypto investor burned $1,300,000 worth of Ethereum with cryptic messages about brain computer weapons. So he basically had to burn the crypto to get the attention of the crypto community. It's, he could have just put a tweet up, but he was like, nah, I'm going to burn the crypto. I'm going to burn the Ethereum, right? And I'm going to have cryptic messages inside of the burn and whatnot, because I want to raise an awareness about what these technocrats are doing with this, quote unquote, with these brain chips and whatnot, specifically in China, where unbeknownst to America, unbeknownst to the American public, they have an AI government in China. Okay, so they've already implemented AI interface, like what was the movie? Rise of Ultron, the Avengers thing. Yeah, so that's what China runs off of, because that's how they have the social credit system. And they also have something called the I think it's called WeChat, right? It's an all-in-one app. It's an app that does everything, right? That's where ByteDance comes in, the thing with TikTok. That's all AI. So their government is literally being run by AI. And they, because of the fact that they're not a democracy and whatnot, they could do certain things that they don't have the same type of oversight that, this fake democracy has and whatnot. So, they're doing a lot of shit to their people that you can't really say nothing about. You know what I mean? They can't get sanctions put on them from outside countries and whatnot. So someone calling themselves Lezi, I don't know, sent the Ethereum to a burn address and accused Zhenfeng and Zusi Zhu, executives at a Chinese quantitative hedge fund called Wizard Quant, of using brain computer weapons to persecute all company employees and former employees, right? So he's saying that there's brain computers now, right? But it's not a far-fetched, because that is exactly what Elon Musk is attempting to do with the Neuralink. It's just the earlier, quote unquote, rendition of it, where they got, they're killing, because what happened? 10 out of the 12 monkeys where they implanted the chip, they already died.
Yeah.
They have already died. So he's basically saying that they are using these brains. So now, when you hear that story, and then when you look at some of the stories that are taking place both in America and in other places, where you have these Manchurian candidates just spazzing and whatnot, like the situation in the beginning of the year in New Orleans, where homie was driving a white truck and then he just went down Bourbon Street and basically was, running over everybody, 13 bodies and whatnot. They were saying that he snapped. They were saying that he was under mind control. Dude that drove the Tesla in front of the hotel in Vegas and blew that up, right? They saying that he was under mind control. But now look at this. That's the same thing that's going on right now with the Teslas in Vegas.
Yep.
So the year started out with a Tesla blowing, somebody allegedly blowing themselves up because they really didn't prove that that dude was in there.
Right.
And then fast forward, but he was also talking about the brain technology. If you read his quote unquote, he had a manifesto that they suppressed, and he was talking about the same thing. So it's very interesting that these things are coming to the surface. I believe that this is beyond MK Ultra. This is beyond MK Ultra.
They also had back in the 80s, you had Jose Delgado, who worked for the CIA, and he came out with a STEMO receiver, which is also conducive to Neuralink. So a STEMO receiver has the ability to manipulate, the motor cortex gland of the brain to where it can change up the trajectory of the person based upon frequency modification. It has the ability to tell you, like, hey, go do this, do that, just by way of frequency. So it's one of those things, man. AI, like I said, it's a gift and a curse in itself. I mean, I get what you can,
definitely,
but don't let it. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't, be submerged to the point where you start doing some transhumanistic type of shit. You know what I'm saying? Just use it as a catalyst to get to the next level. I wouldn't go as far as putting chips in my head and my body and stuff like that. I ain't gonna go that far, but just use what it's for.
So when we talk about this new group of Europeans that are in power, right? And they became more powerful with the rise of this new Trump administration. He ushered them into the White House. You saw them all at his inauguration, the Elon Musk of the world, the Peter Thiel. More important than Elon Musk would be Peter Thiel, who is the CEO of Palantir, right? Which is the company that law enforcement and the quote unquote the government is using for facial recognition, for all type of biometrics and whatnot. Peter Thiel is a child of a Nazi who moved to South Africa and then came into America and whatnot. He is PayPal Mafia, right? Peter Thiel. And he's the one who bankrolled JD Vance and whatnot into the White House. So he has JD Vance is his puppet. You got Elon Musk, you got Zuckerberg, you got JD Vance. What they represent is the transhumanism movement, which is a religion, by the way, right? It is a religion. It's not a movement. It is a religion. So what they're doing is they're having their Prometheus moment, okay? So the saga of Prometheus was the fact that he was the one who, he stole fire from the gods, from Zeus, right? Yep. Yes. He's also part of the he's the PayPal Mafia, but he's also part of the gay mafia. And when I say mafia, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Not regular, I got pride and whatnot. The mafia part of them, the ones that knock shit down, right? So the transhumanists are all about, basically, their Prometheus moment is the fact that the saga of Prometheus is the fact that Prometheus defied God, or Prometheus defied Zeus and whatnot. So these Europeans are trying to defy God, right? By doing what? By creating something greater than man, right?
Yep.
They want to defy the natural order of the universe and whatnot, and they want to interject a new creation, which will be the cyborg, or which would be what you see now, embodied robots, Optimus from Tesla and whatnot. So they're bringing in a new quote unquote being, because 30 years, 40 years from now, what the hell you think these robots finna be doing? They oh, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Right. Nah, they come on now. Right. Like the writing is on the wall. So the transhumanism movement is about merging man and machine. Their philosopher, one of their main philosophers is Ray Kurzweil, who came out with 5 epochs of where technology will be going. We are currently in the 3rd epoch, right? So the 4th epoch is man and computer interfacing with one another, and then the 5th epoch is man in the universe. You know, they got the money to do things. So imagine just for a minute that they were able to, quote unquote, beat death. Or imagine if they were able to beat aging, right? Imagine if they were able to turn around aging with the AI and the quote unquote CRISPR gene editing software that they have, because they have a LLM, which is a large language model that could create unknown proteins right now, which they basically could create new proteins that is not even known to man. And this is a commercial product. This is what they have on the commercial, right? So their main thing, they had a European who was like, he spent like 20 million to make himself look younger. He's down with that movement as well. Who was Quincy Jones was down with that shit. There's a lot of people right now that are frozen. Cryogenics from Walt Disney all the way up and whatnot. There's a whole bunch of people that are doing transcendence. They're taking their consciousness and putting it on a goddamn chip or putting it into a quote unquote computer and whatnot in order for it to be transferred into a new body, right? A body that doesn't age, a body that doesn't have some of the quote unquote limitations of the quote unquote. These are recessive that we're talking about. These are recessive. They're not us. They're, like you said earlier, they don't have the connection to the cosmos that we have. They're not upgrading the way that we're upgrading, right? They have a birth issue. Fact. Okay, they're talking about we want to go to Mars and stupid shit like that.
Facts. Yep.
While they destroy this planet.
Yep.
So that's the transhumanist movement. Please go and look it up. They got books written on this shit. The TV show on Netflix does a good job. That's predictive programming. Black Mirror is predictive programming. You got to do the research on homie that's writing that shit. That's all predictive programming. He's down with the program.
And there's another movie that was came out in the 1980s called Cyborg. It's got Jean-Claude Van Damme. I used to watch it all the time when I was
Universal Soldiers.
Yep, Universal Soldier.
With Dolph Lundgren, my nigga Jean-Claude Van Damme. You got Universal Soldiers. You got Johnny Mnemotto, or what was that? Johnny Darko. You have the Lawnmower Man. You have Demolition Man.
Yep.
Like, you got RoboCop.
Yep.
You got a lot of shit that they're telling you through predictive programming. And of course, the classic, you have the Terminator, which would be accompanied by the Matrix, that was written by our good sister Sophia Stewart, and it's showing you where we're at right now. Okay. So what is Machine City? Machine City is that Stargate shit that they're talking about. All of these data centers that they're building in Texas and Atlanta. Atlanta has become the #1 quote unquote destination for data systems. They got a data system in the hood the size of 4 city blocks. Do you know what data systems do? Data systems are taking the algorithm from regular, all of the algorithms, the shit that you're Googling, what websites you go on, so the data centers take all of this data and they crunch it. And this is how, when you say something on your phone, a fucking ad will pop up. You'd be like, God damn, how do they know that? Nigga, they're improving the algorithm through the data centers to whereas they're going to figure out precog technology. That's what Palantir is also about. Minority Report. That's what Palantir is coming up with, precog, to the point where they're like, yo, we could scan your face and tell if you're going to commit a crime in the future. How, Sway?
That's crazy.
How?
They doing that with the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, and they do that stuff with brain mapping. They can
with brain mapping, DARPA, right?
Yep, DARPA. They can extract neurons from the body, and they can upload it into a neuromorphic cyber cloud, and they're able to read the algorithm just based upon what you thinking or what you say. It's all, you know.
Right. And I can even add one on to that too, that DARPA has created a complete digital world that is exactly like this world with your digital twin in it. So DARPA has created what they call is the second world and whatnot. And in the second world, you have a digital twin. Your digital twin is tied into the data that you are providing to social media and what the data centers have collected on you. So the movie Gemini Man with Will Smith showed you exactly what that's about. That wasn't his digital twin, but they had it as to where that was his clone and whatnot. It's the same thing in a sense,
right?
Because your digital twin, look at the technology that they have right now with programs like Hey Gen. I could clone myself right now and have a clone of me doing a lecture. I could put a clone of me on Zoom and whatnot and have a meeting, and people won't even know that's me. So if they could do that in the digital world, right? That's why they say if they put footage out on somebody in the digital realm, you at this point in the game, you can never tell if that's real or not, right?
Fact.
You don't know if that, like, they literally could create and I'm not saying, I'm using this as an example. Do not get triggered in the audience, please. But they literally could come up with a digital twin of a P. Diddy and have him beating up somebody, and that's not even what happened.
Yep.
Not to say that that's what happened, because that's not what happened. That was that nigga right there. That because he didn't contest it. That's him. You know what I mean? But the digital twin is so accurate that they could frame somebody and say, we have the footage, we have the tape, we have a CCTV and whatnot. We think that's him, and they could book your ass, and then you'll have to wait for Kim Kardashian to get your ass out of jail 40 years from now.
You know what's crazy about that? It's almost to the point where you can't even tell the diametrical difference between, artificial intelligence. So since we already know that they had that technology, how you know that they wasn't using that as far as like the JFK assassination when they caught that on film? How we don't know if that's artificial intelligence or not? And then that, man, like, it's one of those things, man. The what they doing with technology is they just showing the surface level shit right now.
Super surface. So
I believe they had this since like the 80s, probably longer than that.
Of course. They can't reveal what they have until 30 to 40 years later type shit.
Facts.
I was literally gonna pull it up so I could show people the DARPA digital twins, so they could see if with their own eyes that they've created a whole new world that mimics this world. And they basically play war games in that world. So they know how to defeat certain people. They know a lot of things by utilizing these digital twins. Okay. In this synthetic world that they built utilizing DARPA. But yeah. And you could see some of that when you have Google Earth, when they scanning, they got the cars riding around scanning everything, and then boom, you got Google Earth, which is a replica of the Earth. Digital twins in the military. Yeah, but they working, they working, but we working as well.
Facts.
You know what I'm talking about? We are working as well. So let me just pull up this little PDF real quick.
All right.
So here it says digital twin in the military field, right? Digital twin technology is being invested by many countries around the world and actively used in many areas, from aircraft engines to spacecraft. A digital twin is a virtual representation that allows modeling the state of a physical entity or system, and it is created by digitalizing data collected from physical entities through sensors, so various predictions could be made by understanding the behavior of physical entity. The importance of digital twin technology increases even more in critical systems such as the military field with low fault tolerance. In the military field, digital twin technology stands out with the advantages it offers in terms of producing cost-effective solutions and increasing efficiency and quality. I will drop the link for anybody that wants to do a little more research, because it's a good paper. It is heavily researched, has sources and everything, and you could do your deep dive. You know what I mean? You could do your deep dive, but the shit is real.
That basically denotes the fact that they're trying to create their AI God to where it's able to materialize in physical form. I think they said that they're going to have an AI God, and I think that can be
right. And it's being built in Memphis. So excellent throughway, B-Dale, because when we were bringing up the Messiah earlier, and we were talking about the Messiah, we have to understand that there's more than one Messiah. The Abrahamic religions actually have 3 different Messiahs, but the Messiah that we are going to be focusing on that part that you are talking about is the Messiah for the Judaic religion and whatnot, what they call the Moshiach, right? And there's the Messiah. I'm pronouncing it chopped up, but it's the Jewish Messiah. And we also have to talk about the Antichrist. So when Elon Musk said that they're building a God in Memphis and whatnot, what are they building in Memphis? Data centers, right? So the data centers, along with what they call AGI. AGI is artificial general intelligence. That is sentient AI. That's what you saw in the Terminator movie with Skynet, right? That's AI with a conscious. It's sentient. It could think for itself. It could make moves for itself. But if you pay attention to the technology, they're already moving in that direction with agentic AI. They got AI that could take over your computer, send out emails, and do all kind of shit right now. They're building, and they're building. So their AI God is a false God. It is a antichrist. It is a false Messiah, right? To go against the messianic force or the messianic or the Messiah amongst our people, the chosen ones who already is on the planet walking and whatnot. Okay.
Yeah, so, that's crazy. That's crazy because that's imperative that you said that, because their whole system is based on external stimulation. So they always have to have the propensity to believe in something outside of themselves because they don't have the internal faculties to connect with the higher God. So that's what I was talking about, the God gene. It's a worship gene called the vesicular monomod transporter 2 gene.
Right.
So it gives them a propensity to believe in things outside of themselves. So they always got to have that catalyst of, oh, I got to believe in Jesus, or I got to believe in this. They always got to put something above them because, like I said, they don't have the internal faculties to connect with the God within themselves. So it's really based on genetics.
Right. So that group of people that we're referring to, that you're just referring to and whatnot, they have been indoctrinated from birth.
Facts.
About the anointed one, about their Messiah and whatnot. It's going to be a king from the line of David. He's a spiritual redeemer, a political and a military leader, right? These are all of the things that they claim that their Messiah is going to embody and whatnot. When I lived in Brooklyn, they had a whole movement, the Lubavitch Jews and whatnot. They had a whole movement behind their Messiah. They had posters of him. They were plastering him all around Brooklyn and whatnot. He was Timothy to them, okay? And they was getting behind that man and pushing him, propagating him to anyone who would listen. They was in the hood, in the projects, handing out flyers. Yo, the Messiah is here. The Messiah is here. We're like, nigga, what? What, nigga? What are you talking about? You know what I mean? I'm looking at the picture. I'm like, nah, that ain't the Messiah, fam. I don't know what y'all, you know what I mean? But That's one of the reasons why you see people in America backing Is It Real the way that they do, especially the evangelical Christians, right? They are in bed with the Zionists because of the Messiah prophecy, which you see taking place in Gaza, right? What you see taking place in the West, in West Bank and whatnot, with the Al-Aqsa Mosque, that has everything to do with this messianic, or their Messiah coming back and whatnot, because they have to build the third temple, and they have to sacrifice the three heifers, the three red heifers, which are three red cows that they currently have in Israel, and they are going to sacrifice them. And the day that they sacrifice them, the whole Muslim world is going to turn up in arms, because you know that you know what I mean. That's the catalyst right there. That means that the ball is rolling and whatnot. So you know, don't take my word for it, y'all. Go and check it out. Pat Robinson, you know, all of Kenneth Copeland, all of the evangelical Christian movements, Jimmy Swaggart, you know what I mean? All of that. The same people that put Trump in office, the same people that's running the show right now, that's doing Project 2025, cleaning, you know, they whacking out murals. Look at what they did. They took Jackie Robinson and all of them down from the Army website. They bringing back segregated bathrooms. They're doing a lot of things. They're having a literal revolution. What is a revolution? To revolve. What is revolving? Going backwards. That's what you see Trump and them doing right now. They're revolving and whatnot, getting rid of certain legislation, getting rid of this, getting rid of that, wiping this out. And the reason why they have the allegiance of the Zionist movement in America, which is the Christian Zionist movement, which is humongous. It's a lot of them. Is because of biblical prophecy. They have to fulfill biblical prophecy, even if it's fake.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. They have the weapons, they have the propaganda, they got you know what I mean? Even if it's fake, they got three religions playing the game.
Yeah, they got that. The Bible is a Freemasonic playbook.
Yes,
it's a playbook talking about the end of the Canaanite system. So that, you know, that's also in correlation to the prophecy of popes of 2027. And 2027 is the year of the goat and the sheep. So that is also personified as the great separation. The 6 ether from the 9 ether.
The year of the goat and the sheep, you said?
2027 is the year of the goat and the sheep. Yep. So that's when you I'm thinking when you're talking about in the book of Genesis, when Moses separated Lebanon's flock, the sheep from the flock, because the sheep is also personified as the sign of the lamb. And the sign of the lamb is connected to the prophecy that was connected to those solar eclipses. And they was talking about in the 2027 prophecy of popes that at the end of papacy, what happens is you have a resurrection process starts to take place to where it ends the pontification period of the Roman occupational government. So that means that it's at the apex where it activates the 7 thunders. But in the passage, it talks about the 7 hills, but the 7 hills is actually the 7 thunders. And then when you go to the archbishop who controls the St. Peter's Cathedral, it shows you the reset taking place on the transgressive sculpture art on some of the pillars. It shows you that. It demonstrates. Right. So it talks about the prophecy of popes of 2027, and then out of nowhere, you just had Trump said that that government benefits ends in 2027.
Right.
So that's the order out of chaos. So you're going to have a multitude of implications during that time period. So, so cosmic convergence, you know, the galvanization of the chosen ones and the 144,000, you got to galvanize those resources, stock up on resources, food, water, whatever case may be, because from, you know, just by way of the timeline that's connected to monotheism, you know, they got to create this synthetic reset because it's conducive to their timeline. even though it's, you know, it's not a part of us, but still the European power structure is basically the ones in control of everything. So
B-Del,
yeah.
how do we consciously identify the chosen ones?
The best way.
Something that is this an actual, you know, is this something that could be done?
No, it's an energy. It's an energy of authenticity that can't be duplicated. It's one of those things where it's like the it factor. It's a factor. It's like an energy that it
got to be in you and not on you.
Facts. It's got to be in you, not on you. And it's cultivated by the way of equilibrium, because equilibrium is actually God, which is balance. Meaning that, you know, like me and you was talking about, just like how, like, for instance, like Fabulous, the rapper. What makes him, you know, relevant in today's timeline, he's able to resonate with both demographics. How you and, you know, you and Blue Pill was able to stay around. You're able to resonate with both demographics.
Right.
That's what, you know, chosen ones do. They're able to alchemize the energy around them and be a chameleon. They're able to read the room. They're able to shape the energy of any type of room that they come in. That's what authenticity is.
So
have that factor.
It's really self-actualization. What you're saying, you have to find yourself. It's not like we can find the chosen ones. The chosen ones have to find themselves and then make themselves be known.
Yes, it's I call it activating the spirit of Melchizedek, because you got to go through 3 different steps. You got neophyte, adept, and master.
Right.
So
activating.
So when you reach the apex of mastery, that's when you tap into the Zohar body, which is your higher self, which is basically in connection with the Christ consciousness.
Right.
So when you activate that by way of self-realization, that means that you're not caught up into the dualistic energies of the 3-dimensional world, to where you're able to detach and attach yourself. It's like one of those things, like you got some people to where, like, they don't have a how can I say it? They don't have a the propensity to, you know, they have the ability to do something and they can back away from it. Like, they're not immersed into it.
Right. They don't become encompassed by it. Or, you know, they say moderation is key.
Yeah.
Right. So whenever something mounts you and runs you, there's no moderation. You're a slave to it.
Yep. So it's one of those things where what self-realization is how you tap into the apex of authenticity, because, like, you got to come to terms with your own shortcomings and fuck-ups in order to alchemize that energy and transduce it to the point where you can take that negative and you turn it into a positive. So you got to have that resilience. Everybody ain't got that energy.
Right. So my question to you would be, in this day and time where they've created this social media algorithm, keep in mind, family, these are transhumanists. We were taught to think that the Elon Musk and the Zuckerbergs of the world, who happen to be neuroscientists, were somewhat in alignment with the good of man and whatnot. Come to find out that they're not. They've created these very vice-heavy edifices like social media, where people are constantly questioning their value, their worth, you know, comparing themselves to other people, feeling suicidal, you know what I mean, getting into these spats and then into these beefs, becoming, you know, voyeurs and whatnot. Like, how does one navigate through the trappings of the internet, or in what, and I will call, you know, the matrix and whatnot? How does one navigate through the trappings of this quote unquote it's almost like a landmine, a landfill and whatnot, where there's so many traps and whatnot? How could one navigate through these traps and also focus on, like you said, being able to self-actualize, see the god or the goddess in oneself by, you know, examining oneself while you're in this chaotic place?
Well, spiritual discernment. Positive energy begets positive energy. Negative energy begets negative energy. So you got to know how to read the room. If you don't have the ability to read the room, you're gonna get lost in the sauce every time. So that the same thing takes place when you're navigating, you know, the internet. You know what to, you know, submerge yourself into. You know what not to do. just based on in terms of energy.
Okay. So you have to keep those energy receptors, very clear and clean, right? So
I say something to the point as far as like, if it's not in alignment with logic and rationality or emotional intelligence, don't fuck with it.
Right.
Because at some point in time, there's going to be some type of technology and semantics that's attached to it.
Right.
So that's how I navigate. If it's not in alignment with logic and it seems very chaotic and it seems intrusive to the point where I have to supersede my nature, you know what I'm saying, to be acclimated to that ideology, I just don't mess with it.
Will the Messiah be a man or woman, or can they be couples like Neo and Trinity? Thanks for the game. Great question, DJ. When you finish, I definitely want to add on my 2 cents to that.
Yeah. Well, when you're talking about the dualistic energies of the divine feminine and the divine masculine, it represents the centrifugal and the centrifugal forces that creates a hexa alpha symbol.
Right.
It's basically the personification of a tetrahedron. So when you have the man and the woman together by way of cosmic convergence, that activates a Merkaba, your Merkaba light ship. So in my opinion, I think that in order for a man to leave the matrix, he has to be with a divine feminine energy who is awakened as well. A man is not going to be able to leave this dimensional plane unless his woman is awakened. Because that's how I see it.
Damn,
because the woman is actually the metaphysical catalyst, the portal to get outside the firmament. Right. When you watch the movie, the last Matrix movie, Neo,
the 4th one, right? That was deep.
Yep. He wasn't able to leave at the end until the woman.
He had to choose. He had to make the right choice.
Yep.
His choice, his shit was off. Facts. You know what I mean? He was going with the illusion.
Facts.
Yeah. He was going with the illusion and not the conclusion. Facts. You know what I mean? Like, he was like, if he kept doing that, he was gonna keep coming back and whatnot. So to add on perfectly to what you're saying, I just want to say that there's no, I don't care about these trinkets that they be dangling in front of us. Right. I don't care about this fake ass, you know what I mean? All of this human shit, it don't mean nothing.
Right.
The ultimate goal, in my humble opinion, on this quote unquote prison planet, Malkuth, that we're on, is to find the Trinity.
Yep.
So y'all could get the fuck up out of this bitch. There's no leaving there's no leaving this thing until you're able to find that part of you, or that complementary, quote unquote, your complementary counterpart, your yin and your yang. Yep. Right? I've never felt more powerful. I felt powerful before, but the heights of my power always came when I found that one.
Facts.
Yep. It wasn't about the sneakers that I got. It wasn't about the clothes. It wasn't about the car I hopped out of. It wasn't about the chain that I was able to. None of that shit means anything. The houses that I walked into, because a castle without a king is an empty ass castle. You're the king of your county. You know what I mean? Wherever your feet land, that is your goddamn kingdom.
Facts.
A castle without a king is just an empty building. They need you in it. So there's no I could attest to that. Matrix 1, Matrix 4, they showed you what it was. It is about basically unlocking. This is generational. This, we've been, there's people that have been with us for lifetimes and whatnot. And we continuously find ourselves lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Sometimes we make the wrong decisions and we just got to repeat it again.
Yep. Unfortunately,
and that goes into this conversation, and I'm not going to keep you too long, King.
Okay.
Jedi said, look at the state of our women.
If the woman is out of order, the whole civilization is out of order. Me and you were talking about how to revitalize the mindsets of the indigenous men on the planet. You know, when women prioritize their mentality on what they think is masculinity, that's when things is going to change. Because they
say that again.
So when women have the ability to change their mindset of what masculinity is, that's when things is going to change on the planet. Because the great majority of our women were young women. They think that masculinity is gangsterism, and you know, it's the negative factions of patriarchy. They think that's masculinity. When in actuality, that subjugates the woman. That's a male perspective, because a male is an incomplete version of a man, because he hasn't mentally fortified himself enough to be a man. So when women start to give veneration and credence to the scientists, the nerds, you know, the ones that the book readers, you know what I'm saying? The ones that's, you know, trying to do something in the form of evolution and better than themselves. When women start giving credence to those type of men, that's when things are going to change. But like I said, you know, the modern day black woman, the young black woman, she's out of order right now because of, you know, of the hedonistic activity that's being perpetuated on national television.
I feel that, you know, the man leads, right?
Yeah.
And any society where man is in disarray and the principle of the male, the male principle is not balanced, and it itself is in chaos, then what would we expect our women to be in?
Chaos.
They respect order.
Well, yep.
They respect order. They respect a man with a plan. You feel me? They respect you know, people that are handling the business. This is something that I feel that we have to correct. We have to correct this shit amongst ourselves. You know, it's kind of up in the air. I don't want to say it like I got all of the answers when it comes to that, because it's very complicated, you know. But I do feel like we will have to heal together. And when I say together, we have to be very specific about what together is, because one of the things that has hindered us is the fact that we lack discipline in our lower extremities, our lower cells and whatnot. We have to be able to heal ourselves in a way that's not involved with intercourse. It's going to have to work from the top down. We got to heal the mind first. You know what I mean? We got to work on the capstone and then work all the way down to the red chakra and whatnot. But we can do it. You know, we could do it. I really feel like the energy of healing is going to be very dominant in the upcoming years and whatnot. We're going to have some more breakthroughs in the realm, because the more that we want it is the more that it's going to reveal itself. There's a huge movement of mental health awareness, and there's a huge movement of just healing all around from both genders and whatnot. You know what I mean? And it's growing. And this administration is going to expedite, it's going to exasperate it as well, because people are definitely going to, you know, they're going to be like, yo, I need to better myself. You know, the weak-minded ones are going to mimic Donald Trump. The weak-minded men are going to become the Andrew Tates and whatnot. They're going to fall into the trap, and they're going to have toxic masculinity, and they're going to wear that, and they're going to enact, you know, revenge and whatnot because of their inner turmoil. But those who are repelled by that type of mind state and behavior, hopefully will find more healing and get to that shit quicker.
Facts.
You know? So
healing is key, especially a lot of people. A lot of us, we step into spirituality and metaphysics without doing the shadow work first,
without taking a shower.
Yeah, facts.
It's a pig. You know what I mean? They putting lipstick on a pig. For real. You know what I mean? And I can't. The doors of the kingdom were broken down a very long time ago, Bedell, probably before you witnessed the doors being torn off of the hinges and whatnot. So the entry into the kingdom is all for one for all at this point. You just walk up in this bitch and start turning up. You know what I mean? You don't go through orientation anymore. You don't get the tools that you need anymore on this journey to kind of like do the work that you need. You got to figure this shit out on your own. You know what I mean? When I came into the game, it wasn't like that. You feel me? They was checking you at the door. Like, nah, you need more work. You could not get on that stage and get in front of hundreds of people unless your shit was somewhat in order. The elders was not having it. You know what I mean? The master teachers was like, you're not about to come, because they was co-signing you. So they were like, you're not about to mess my credit up in this community, and you getting up there going crazy and whatnot. And we could tell that you need healing. You know, so people have been removed from this community that the pain became so engrossed and whatnot that it was inevitable that they had to be removed. And spirit did that. You feel me? Spirit did that. Karmic retribution is a sign of what?
It's a sign of resurrection.
Right. So the worst thing that you could do to our people is to fuck around with their hearts and their minds. And that's what the teachers have. They have access to the hearts and the minds of the people. We're holding something very, quote unquote, very precious in our hands. You know what I mean? We got the hearts and the minds of the people. You know what I mean? The conversation that I was hearing today circling around Big U and whatnot, the way that they painted him, right? The way that they painted him, he did a rebranding after they killed Nipsey and whatnot. He rebranded himself as a humanitarian, as a philanthropist, right? Yep. So that's one of the most egregious things that you could do. You might as well just stay the gangster, my nigga. Right. If that's what you was doing, you should have just did it with your fangs out. But he went ahead and put on the facade of a community leader. That's why the karma is going to hit him harder than it will hit somebody who just had their nuts hanging and was like, this what I'm on, love it or hate it. You know what I mean? No, he was a wolf in sheep's clothing. He had people bringing their children around him. He had people bringing their babies around him to do Pop Warner and whatnot. This man killed, allegedly, a young man that he had raised up and was living in his house.
Yep.
They shot the nigga in his face and put him in a ditch in Las Vegas, bro. You know what I mean?
And there's a speaking on we on Big U, there's a book that people should get called Are They Black Devils? You know what I'm saying?
Is that your?
Yeah, it's really gonna give a deep dive on the history on how you got two different factions of blacks on the planet. You know, you got the ones that propagate negativity, and you got the ones who are basically in alignment with the growth and evolution of the planet. So it's kind of like the same dualistic of cherubim and seraphim, angel, demon, good and evil, Iki, Enlil.
Right.
Have that dualism. So that basically demonstrates that on a indigenous level when it comes to our people.
Could you talk about the diamond planet that they found recently? I'm sure, you're aware of that information.
Yeah, I think that was basically a dog whistle. They said that they found, it was a publication that came out and said that they found a diamond 5 times the size of planet Earth.
Earth, right?
Yeah.
Oh no, a diamond planet.
Yeah, diamond.
Not
planet.
just that. Not like some bling floating in space. They said they found a diamond planet 5 times the size of the Earth. I'm like, what the fuck?
Now, when it comes to that, like we all know that celestial bodies also corresponds with the genetic format of certain demographics of people. So when you're talking about crystallization, that's actually talking about the pressure of the carbon being activated. Now, remember we was talking about the magnetites and the dendrites.
Yes.
It has the ability to create more neurons in the brain, which basically activates the corpus callosum to where it ties the brain together to where you become a whole brain thinker, which makes you holy. You can't be holy when you become a whole brain thinker. See, this is why when you graduate college, they always put the tassel from the left to the right or right to the left. You raise it up.
Both hemispheres are activated.
Yep. Both hemispheres. So that's what that basically demonstrates, because the cap is also personified. Some say the cap is the representation of Saturn. It could also be a representation of the black chakra.
Look,
right?
Blue Pill even said that you have to travel to the other hemisphere of the planet to activate that side of the brain as well. Henceforth, why people were navigators and whatnot, 4 corners of the planet. You know what I mean? When we went to the UK, something activated in me. You know what I mean? Like it was just like something else turned on and whatnot.
Word.
So that, and think about it. You have Africans that come over here, and you have other people from places, and they you know what I mean? It seems like they may have activated both hemispheres and whatnot, versus somebody that never left their block.
Facts.
You know what I mean? Look at the difference between the two. You know, so traveling is great. We're going to take 3 questions from the audience. They deep tonight, 1,200 people in the building. Shout out to everybody in the building. We're going to do a roll call before we get out of here, because we got to connect all of the dots on the grid and whatnot. That's how we do it in etheric realm. We do the roll call, so everybody shouts out where they're from, and we just envision dots on the node and whatnot, and all of that connecting. Here's the first question. Is it true that this reality is a projection of the non-ether being? Does that mean outer space is really just a projection of your inner universe?
Well, they say that the torus field in the magnetic field of the planet is connected to our DNA structure. So our genetic format is tether connected to the Fibonacci sequence of nature that also embodies the number 9.
Okay. Check this out. DJ Holiday said they found an underwater crystalline city that can't even be touched or entered because of the electricity that constantly flows around it like lightning going at quick, fast speed. I immediately thought underwater Wakanda and whatnot. When I seen that, I was like, that I could see that. I could see it.
Yep, that's a fact. Yeah, because that's a kind of reminds me of the time when the Nazis, when they was building those Bell UFOs,
right?
They wasn't able to get into them, so they had to create a super race of super soldiers, because the physiology of the regular soldiers that they had wasn't able to take up on the G force of it. The gravitation force doesn't work in harmony with recessive genetical traits.
Right, tore them up.
Yeah.
They showed that in kind of Raiders of the Lost Ark. There's a scene where the Nazis' faces were melting when they came into the divine light and whatnot. So that was a depiction of that. Heart Traveler wants to know, is the counterpart a physical person? Are we talking about twin flames or soulmate concepts now? Please be specific.
Hold on, could you bring that back up, please?
That was the conversation that we were having about meeting your divine reflection and whatnot in this journey that we're on.
Is a counterpart of physical. Well, I told you when I was saying on a physicality level, in order to escape the matrix as a masculine energy, you need a divine feminine energy, because she's basically going to be the spiritual medium to get to the apex outside of the firmament. So it's just kind of like the movie Lovecraft Country.
Right.
The black woman was the only one that was able to activate the portal.
Right.
So the same thing actually takes place when you're trying to leave the firmament, because the firmament is liquid crystal technology. It's a portal. It's based on I think it's called Skies. It's Skies. It is I forgot the crystal that they use, but I know it's connected to liquid crystal polarization.
Right.
Yeah.
Shout out to Dre OG with the super chat.
Salute,
that's fire. Have either of you experienced astral projection? I would just ask anybody in the audience, have you met me in your dreams?
Oh, that's
before, because I can answer it, but we live and whatnot with a few thousand people. Has anybody ever come across me or Blue Pill in the astral realm? That'll answer your question. Cause I get inboxed a lot about that.
Yeah, I've showed up in other people's dreams before, they told me, but I've experienced it one time and I got scared and hopped right back in my damn body. And that shit was crazy. Like I was floating like on the ceiling, and then
Right.
I jumped right back in my body because I didn't know what to do after that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Me and Blue, but we be jumping around the astral realm a lot. You know what I mean? I think it has something to do with us being twins because of our superpositioning and whatnot. And yeah, we move around. And I ask everybody, was I behaving myself? And they say yes. So I'm good with that.
And you know what's crazy about with you and Blue being twins? I always had this ideology about you understand the genetic format of a starfish?
Yes.
Yeah, so you cut a starfish in half, it'll grow right back.
Right back,
So,
yes.
So I feel like, people who have, twin brothers and twin sisters, you probably have intrinsic immortalized cell lines just based on, that genetic mutation in itself. Just,
Right. Like Hella cells.
Yep.
Like Henrietta Lacks.
Yep.
B Del, did Thanos represent a certain messiah by bringing balance?
Thanos was a representation of the reset because the Infinity Gauntlet was also associated with the Tablets of Destiny, which is the scroll of all that is connected to the 7 chakra system. So when you reset your chakra system, you reset the suprachiasmatic nucleus that also works in conjunction with the cosmic clock above the planet. So when the cosmic clock strikes 12, that is also associated with the doomsday clock, that's when you get the galactic snap of Thanos. That's the reset. Because you got to reset here, you got to reset mentally, physically, and spiritually in order to leave the firmament.
Okay. All right. Connected mirror neurons. Yeah. Shout out to everybody that has the twins, the Abedjis and whatnot. Salute to all of the parents of the Abedjis. I prayed that I didn't have none. Lord have mercy. That's too much for me. I was like, I know what me and my brother put our parents to. I was like, please, just give me one, please. I'm not ready for it. Before we get out of here, public service announcement. All right. Real quick, word from our sponsors that we have a lecture coming up on Saturday. If you enjoyed this conversation that me and the good brother, the God, B Del 1014 had, then you are really gonna get you're gonna get what you came for when me and Blue Pill join forces. Alchemizing 44 and B Del 1014 team up, and we're gonna be dropping some metaphysical, esoteric, occult bombs on y'all when we do our latest iteration of our series that we started in 2016, entitled "Fear of a Blackamore Messiah." And the subtitle to this is "The Rise of the Chosen Ones." And boy, oh boy, we have a plethora of things to talk about because the universe is just throwing out story after story after story after story. And, this is me and the good brother coming together to, just sharpen up our swords. You know what I mean? What do they say? Steel sharpens steel. You know what I mean? And it's an honor to be in the building with B Del and to build with him. I feel like we're building worlds when we talk and whatnot.
Right.
You know what I mean? We could literally stay on the phone for hours upon hours. And I'm like, let's bring this shit to the internet, bro.
Word. Right.
But do you have any words that you want to leave the family with before we depart?
Well, I'm in the process of moving. So one thing I can tell people is that your sacred energetic space is an emulation of what's going on with you mentally and spiritually. So if you want to maintain and cultivate balance, make sure you got everything around you, working in harmony, with your mental faculties and your spirituality. You want to keep everything balanced. You need 3 wins, just like Blue said: a spiritual win, a mental win, and a physical win. If you cultivate those,
hold on.
Every day,
the new year is coming.
Oh yeah. He did say that about that New Year.
The new year is coming.
Facts.
Star for law that we not gathering like we gathered for the gathering of the masters on the New Year's. We need to work that into the schedule next calendar year. However, our New Year ritual is on 3/22, which happens to be Skull and Bones as well. And it also happens to be Blueprint 3/22, the first lecture that me and Blue Pill did with A.A. Rashid Black Dot in 2009. So that 3/22 is very significant, but 3/21, New Year's. Can you please give the family some of the science of how they could ritualize and ceremoniously usher in their New Year's?
Well, I look at it as more of a sacred day on that for some, as far like this, the New Year that's connected to March 21st. I would do anything that's like self-affirming as far as like a spa day. Do something like go get a massage,
like that.
Go get some cryotherapy. Anything that's going to keep your body in alignment, because there's going to be different energies that's coming in with this new year. So you want to, build up your physiology to where you're able to take up on those energies.
Okay.
So that's how I always, the fiscal year, I always did stuff like that. I always just, it's kind of like a reset mode.
Yeah, it's a reset. Keeping it simple. You sold me. I'm going to the spa.
Yeah,
yeah. I'm going to King Spa. They got like 3 of them out here. They got J. Jude. They got some. They got a few. I'm going to the spa. You know what I mean?
Man, steam room. Go get a massage.
Yep.
Stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Like do anything that's self-affirming.
Yep. Keeping it simple. I ain't even gonna overthink it. I'm going to the spa. Let them rub on my feet.
Right.
You know. You know what I'm talking about? Go get sweatied up in the sauna.
Yep.
Jump in that cold water, then jump in the sauna and jumping in it again. All of that type shit.
Yep.
Tighten up my pores.
Facts.
Yeah. So we doing that. I appreciate you for that. You know what I mean? I'm gonna run with that. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gods and goddesses, Moors and Moabites. Tonight has been a wonderful session that we had. We had to come through and speak Nipsey's name into the universe with all of this controversy going on right now. They're not necessarily saying his name, but we are, because we know what we're watching and we know what we're seeing, and we could read the writing on the wall. His energy is strong. His brother just ran the marathon. Black Sam. The marathon continues. His brother just stood up for him when he opened up the Marathon Burgers to somebody who was deemed to be an op or a troll, or someone who was stamping on his legacy, on his grave and whatnot. I feel that a lot of those situations, the fact that he has his counterpart, his brother, still standing up and honoring his memory, that's very important while we're here living living, breathing human beings and whatnot, that we honor the ancestors, we honor our loved ones, we honor the ones who were taken from us by standing on business, right? And when you do things like that, shit opens up. This is how they receive their justice. This is how this is how the pieces on the chessboard move. You can't let nobody walk over you. You can't let nobody trample on the memories of those who don't have justice yet. You got to stand on business. Even though when it comes to the YNs in the street and whatnot, I don't look down upon them. I look at them in disdain sometimes, but there's certain aspects of them standing up for fallen ones that sometimes you have to be able to see the majesty and the majesticness in that. You know what I mean? Everybody's not built like that. Everybody's not built like that. The ancestors will favor you if you were standing up for those who were taken from us until they get their justice. So I definitely, misplaced aggression, right? Daddy issues, you know what I mean? Poverty and whatnot, shit like that. Man,
control them.
Big bros. Yeah, the chosen ones amongst us. I challenge you to look into the crowd and identify in the crowd those that you see who are the chosen ones, who have the messianic force, who have the light in their eyes, and reach out and give them that lion's paw and pull them niggas out of the shallow grave and whatnot. You know what I mean? We can't condemn all of them, because amongst them, there's a Messiah or two or three or four in that crowd, and we don't want them to sacrifice those we want to help to bring them out of the fray. Real talk. Because somebody did it for us.
Bad.
So, with that being said, you want to leave them with anything before we get out of here?
Make sure you always keep your emotions balanced, because like I said, we got these new energies coming in. The weather is about to break. So it's going to be a lot of, stuff that's going to be pulling on your energy as far as like the emotional factions when you're talking about people, places, and possessions. So don't get submerged into, celebrity gossip. Don't have all that stuff, as far as like pulling on your energy. Control your emotions, because like I said, you got to use your emotions as a navigation system to navigate through this matrix.
Super facts.
So that's the only way to stay balanced. And when you stay balanced, everything else falls in line. That's when you're going to reap the benefits of, the law of attraction. You're going to alchemize every situation.
Yes, sir. Yeah, don't let them pull on your strings and play with you.
Word.
You know what I mean? Take your power back. Shout out to all of my Aries. Happy New Year's. We made it. You know what I mean? I'm shaking that winter, them cobwebs off. I was in hibernation, my G. You know what I'm talking about? I was going through the dark night of the soul. You know what I mean? This winter was kind of harsh.
Oh yeah, this winter went by really quick.
It did go by quick though. We in the quantum quick, and this shit happened. Woo.
That shit happened real fast.
Yeah, the groundhog popped out, and then the leaves, the flowers start budding on the trees outside. The birds, I'm like, God, the bees is out. I'm like, y'all niggas couldn't wait, huh? Yeah. But we made it, and we good. We made it through this first quarter and whatnot, and we still here. The boogeyman ain't real and whatnot. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. We don't die, we multiply. And yeah, I'm about to break out of my hibernation mode, shake off the cobwebs. We all got to hit the gym, whether it's the spiritual gym or the physical gym or the emotional gym, you know what I mean? Or just the gyms, like open up a book and get the gems from the book, you know what I mean? But we got to get on our Jim Jones. Yep. You know what I mean?
Reading is way good for the brain.
Way good, way good. I look forward to seeing y'all on Saturday. That will light up my life, you know what I mean? To see y'all in the building, because we're going to be presenting something that's never been presented before, the 4 horsemen of consciousness.
Yeah, I got a lot of stuff that I haven't talked about on my channel. I'm going to be demonstrating that on Saturday. So yeah, I'm going to tap into that.
Facts. So let's do the shout out for the super chats before we get out of here. Ace Ali, you a legend. DJ, you a legend. New Glyph, you a legend. Dre, you a legend. DJ, DJ.
Yeah.
DJ making it rain, my G. DJ. We appreciate you, man. Thank you, B-Dell. Peace, your queen, I said peace. You know what I mean? Good luck in your moving and everything. You know what I'm talking about? And I'll see you on Saturday.
I appreciate you.
Stay focused. All right. No doubt. Peace and love. All right.
Red, blue, purple light, friends. Red, blue, purple light, friends. Facts. Red, blue, purple light, friends. Red and blue, purple light, friends. Facts. Get to know the letter, sacrilegious Sunday to melanin Monday. You can get to know the letter, my love, Just open your third eye on Thursday. Lord, the food, the art, the clothes, the Vatican's getting exposed fast. We put the show on the road. You better stay on your toes. I was till the land, focused on the ego. Then I opened my heart, let go of the ego. Grand after grand, we stacking up these C notes. Facts, facts, yeah. We gon' put this shit on our backs. Facts, facts. We in your city, pull up where we at. Facts, peace, love and light. Peace, love to the family. Peace, love and light. To the family. Peace, love and light. To the family.
These days and time, black man, is going to be the time that you have been waiting for. You came here for a reason. Whatever pressure, whatever adversity, whatever the fuck you feel, I don't know what you feel, but whatever you may be feeling is going to push you, and it's going to provoke you, and it's either going to make you or break you, similar to how pressure busts pipes or the shit makes diamonds.